season scrimmages a couple of years ago. Was that where you kind of
Kyle and I have gotten to know each other, I think, a lot better over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I think we've gained so much respect for one another, having to face each other. And really, ever since I've been in the NFL, we've played against Kyle in one, shape or form, whether it's been a regular season game, practiced with him, a couple times when I was with Denver,
Yeah.
and then when I was with the Chargers. So, I've seen this program grow. It's something that John and Kyle and I talked about, and very excited to get to work with those guys.
What did you know about Nick Sorensen coming into this, and how has your relationship with him developed?
Yeah, I knew a lot about Nick through the people that he was with in Seattle. He's actually a Clevelander at heart. That's where his family is. So we shared some common ground there in Northeast Ohio. But really got to know him through the guys in Seattle, and then actually after he left Jacksonville, visited with him about our special teams coordinator job. So kind of known of each other. And then when this opportunity came about, I think there was a lot of common ground. Really, it's been really fun to work with him so far.
What is the common ground between the stuff that you've run and the stuff that they've run here now for many years? Do you see a blend that's natural, or is it a little more work to try to get some of those elements in it?
Yeah, I think just a lot of common ground. A lot of respect for how they play defense, both when he was in Seattle and then certainly here in San Francisco, and then have a lot of respect for his experience as a player too. I think he has a lot of foundation in pro football, and so this is a group of guys. Obviously since Kyle and John have been here, having to face them so many times, but set a high standard defensively, and being on the other side of it, certainly a group of guys that we always respected. So I think the team up, I think our backgrounds are more similar than different. But they're also complementary, and so it's been fun to work with Nick and all this group of coaches on defense, because they're very, very talented staff and really awesome group of guys.
Can you sketch out what your role is? What you and Nick have decided kind of what your role is going to be, like during the season, during the week, during the game?
Yeah, we'll work through all the seasonal rhythm stuff, but I think I'm going to be here for Kyle and John where they need me to be. I think it'll be kind of a combination of all my roles in the NFL, but I'm going to be working, primarily on defense, and but I'll be with, a lot of the different position groups, mostly in the secondary, and then working with Kyle, closely on a lot of other things.
Saw you throwing the ball in the defensive skills, and that's Kyle's thing. How did that work out?
I just a former college quarterback, trying to spell the, the starter, if he needs a break, but. That's I think from afar, that's something that I think is a really good aspect of what Kyle does, is connect with the defensive group of guys, and what better way to do it than make them feel good throwing some interceptions.
How much of a sounding board have you already been for Kyle? Like former head coach, somebody who's been through some of these things. He talked about you in the draft process too. Have you been able to kind of just sit down with Kyle and talk about concepts, about personnel ideas?
Yeah, I think that's been the aspect, I think, of the job that I've enjoyed the most, is just teaming up with Kyle and John, and doing, what's going to be best for the Niners. And that encompasses, a lot of different things, but if he needs something, then we've been able to connect and kind of collaborate on that. And that's, a big part of the role that I was excited about.
What was the attraction of coming here as opposed to maybe an opportunity to call defenses somewhere else? Why the role that you picked?
I think the role is really about the people. I think the place, that's where most good decisions happen, if you can kind of center on those things. So just a lot of respect for Kyle from afar, and I think we've gotten to know each other a lot better over the years, and I think there's just a common ground in how to coach and lead a football team, and having to face this team over the years, I felt like it would be a good opportunity for myself and my family, and hopefully be able to help this team be as good as it can be.
Was the interview process unique as far as Kyle hinted that there was a lot of discussions? Was that about finding that common ground philosophically during the interview process?
I think it was just more or less, ironing out the role. I think, again, like a lot of respect from afar, and then coming here and meeting with Kyle and John, it was just, probably determining the role and the fit. I think that we both had that, that respect for each other from a football standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, but it's just, okay, how's it going to work here? Can it work here? And I think it became clear to all of us that it could. and that would be great, for everybody. And so, very thankful for the opportunity, and like I said, I'm excited to get to work.
What is
Said
Leonard
that
Floyd at?
There's no question who the DC is. It's Nick's Nick, obviously. Do you have to talk about that with Nick? Like, I understand I have a reputation. I've been head coach. I want you to know that you're the DC. I mean, do you have to literally have that conversation?
No, I don't think so. That's been defined by Kyle and John. So, what it's really about is putting a group together that's committed to the Niners. And when I came here, that's certainly what I was committed to. And helping this team in whatever way, Kyle and John saw best. And Nick has been fantastic, and we've got a great group of guys on this coaching staff.
You imagine you're gonna be in the booth because Nick's gonna be on the field.
I don't know that. Well, I think we'll take the next couple months training camp, and we've got a lot of time to make those.
You were on the
decisions.
field when you were DC. weren't you?
I was.
Yeah.
What does Leonard Floyd add to this defense, and how does he increase what the defense can do, like schematically, and pressure packages and things like that?
Yeah, Leonard's one of the top players I've ever coached. I coached him at 2 spots, and I've been able to see his growth and improvement as a player. And I felt like last year he's played as well as he's ever played. And that's saying a lot because he's played at a high level. He's been a part of #1 defenses, wherever he's been, Chicago with the Rams, and then part of a really good group last year in Buffalo as well. So very experienced. And, I think, our organization knew a lot about him before. I think me coming here, filling in, whatever gaps they needed. But, Leonard's resume speaks for itself, and I think he's going to be a great fit for this team and our style of play. And I think teaming up with this group of guys that's already here, excited to see what he can do.
You had to strategize against this offense, I think maybe 2 years ago,
Yeah.
when they had McCaffrey just coming aboard.
Sure.
I guess what struck you about the offense and maybe how it's transitioned and just what McCaffrey brings to it?
Yeah, well, Christian, he's one of the toughest covers in the league. He's such a complete player. And I think just the challenges, that our offense presents to whatever defense it faces is you have to defend everybody. And I think that's the, I think the strength of their offense is you have to defend everybody. And that they truly have a style of play that you also have to deal with from a technique standpoint, from a physicality standpoint. And, and I think Christian, when they made that move, it really allowed their offense to affect the entire field, both in the running game and in the passing game, because he's such a weapon. I'm excited to team up with him instead of having to defend him.
There's something really dynamic defenses around the league that seem to sort of dictate the game, where it almost seemed like offenses were reacting to what they were doing. I think the Ravens were a good example of that. What are the challenges in trying to install, whether it's post-snap rotation or exotic blitzes? What are the challenges in trying to get stuff that is kind of complex but make it simple for players to actually understand?
Yeah, I think you got to have enough flexibility within your defense to take advantage of your players, because it starts with your defense. But then you're always trying to make it tough on the offense post snap. The best players in the league, best coaches in the league, post snap, pre snap, if they know exactly what's happening, then you're multiplying their chances of being successful. And so you got to make them operate post snap. I think it's such a scheme world now where every play is on a can, and it's and there's a reason for that, so that they can call plays against ideal looks. So you're trying to present different looks, and if you're going to do that, if you're going to play different stuff, whether it's front coverage pressure, you got to make sure it's tied together. And the only way that's going to happen is if, as a unit, you have command over it. So you got to be able to teach conceptually, and you got to do what your guys can handle. And so, but all the scheme in the world isn't going to help you on Sunday. You got to be a technique-oriented team. And that's something that our program here is known for, is style of play. And so that's what we got to focus on always, is our style of play.
You're going from one Bosa to another Bosa.
Yeah.
I guess, are there similarities that work defensively, or what do you see out of Nick?
Yeah, they're both special players. Very fortunate to coach both of them. I think coming here, I think having to, face Nick, what a challenge he is, and I've coached, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Leonard Floyd, and Nick's always a guy that we would watch. And I think, when I've been other places and we've had to face him, you just know the type of respect that he has in the game plan, that he's a true matchup player. And, one of the top players in the league. And I think I've gained a deeper appreciation of his game being here up close. And Chris has done such a good job with him. And Nick is one of the top players in the league.
What do you think is special about Renato Green as a cornerback in the NFL draft terms?
Yeah, I think he can do all the things that you need DBs to do. He can play man to man. He can play the ball in the deep part of the field. He's a good open field tackler, and then he has position versatility. So I think you saw him match up against elite players in college and be able to defend at a high level, and that's what you want to be able to see from guys outside, is them to defend real guys and have production. And we think his best ball's in front of him.
I believe you had some overlap with Isaac Yiadom in Denver. Obviously, he's been much more productive and played a lot more in the time since then, but were signs of what he ended up doing in New Orleans already present back then?
Yeah, he's a great guy, number one. He's a competitor. I'm really proud of his journey because, the player that I coached in 2019 is not the player that he is now. He has improved so much. He's made it his mission to be an outstanding pro corner. I thought last year he played really, really well for New Orleans. And I think he's excited to team up with this group of guys. A team that is established, defensively that's established, and he's going to be competing, for an opportunity here. But just proud of his journey because he's playing, as well as he's ever played, and he's going to add a lot of depth to our defense.
Is something enjoyable for you about being able to hone in on defense entirely after being, a couple years as head coach, where you're sort of spread around in your duties to be able to get back to your roots? Are you looking forward to that? What's that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm looking forward to all aspects of the job. I think all aspects of this role, teaming up with Kyle, teaming up with our defensive staff, getting to know our personnel department. I think I'm just energized by what this organization has to offer. And like I said, I'm just going to try and do the best I can and what they asked me to do.
You talked about needing to tie things together. That was an area that was singled out at the end of last season, that maybe there's a disconnect between the front and the coverage sometimes. How important and how valuable is Fred Warner, a guy who can do truly anything you ask of him in solving those problems?
Yeah, Fred is, he's one of the top players in the league. He sets a high standard for that position and really for all positions. So his experience, his playmaking, his production, being with him every single day. He's another guy that's improved every single year he's been in the NFL. And, one of those guys, I think when you think of the Niners, you think of Fred Warner. So we're going to continue to try and, center our defense around him. He just makes everybody better. And, he's one of those rare guys in the NFL who, does his job at such a high level and then has all the intangibles from a leadership standpoint. So really looking forward to working with him.
I think one of the things that people talk about when referring to your defenses is the adaptability on the back end. Somebody like Jalen Ramsey in 2020, and then what you did with Derwin James. With this group of DBs, do you see, and the draftees too, somebody like Malik Mustafa, who obviously played a lot of positions in that Panther package in college. Do you see that type of adaptability on this roster to be able to implement some of the stuff that you like?
Yeah, I think John, his group, John Kyle, this group have put together a really deep football team. And I think in the secondary, particularly, we've got a lot of guys who can play corner, a lot of guys who can play inside. Our safeties have flexibility, and I think that's what allows you to have flexibility, is the personnel to do it. So, and our linebackers can all do different jobs too. And, I think some of the acquisitions that we made on the defensive line, both on the edge and inside, that multiplies your ability to be able to do that. So I think, how that, expresses itself is going to, happen in time, this springtime and during training camp, and ultimately, you're trying to put that best product on the field, game one, and then build for a long season. So, but I think we have the pieces to do some nice things.
Kyle and John mentioned you maybe like a chance to freshen up the defense, which they've run pretty successfully for many years, but pretty much the same stuff. Have they shown an interest in let's bring some of your stuff?
Well, yeah, I think that they've always evolved. I think since Kyle's first season and now, I think the defense has changed. I think, when Chris got here, as the defensive line coach, and I think the way they played up front, and then some of the coverage systems that have continued to improve, I think going from, Robert to D'Amico, Steve, and now Nick. I mean, I think you've seen, you know, a really nice evolution, and that's what's important is that, you know, you don't stray too far away from what makes you special, you know. And I think that, you know, like I told you guys, the style of play of this team, I think, is what's made it special. And what we want to make sure that we do is, you know, really focus on that, the details of how we play, and then what we play. You know, that'll take shape as we get to know our players here, you know, over the next couple months, because every group's a little bit different. You know, but the staples of what we've played at a high level here, we need to continue to make sure that those staples stay as strong as they have.
One of the staples, one of the identities of this defense for a long time has been a straightforward four-man pass rush. Your background has been much more exotic and diverse with pass rush. Do you think that's something that could benefit this defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this group, you know, it has, you know, it's known for its four-man pass rush, but, you know, it has a lot of guys who can rush, you know, and I think that's the key of really good rush groups, is that you have the threat of a lot of people, you know, rushing the passer, and which is what we have here. So, and that's why they've rushed the passer at such a high level long before I got here. So, you know, we have a good group of front guys, and that's what you want to be able to do in this league, regardless of what you play, what system you run, what coverages you play. If you can rush the passer with four guys, then, you know, you're feeling pretty good about your chances. And then when you rush more than that, you're doing it because you want to, not because you have to.
When bringing in
How much of Fangio's old 49 defenses have you looked at over the years?
Oh man, I felt like I coached for the Niners long before I got here. You know, working with Vic and Ed Donatel, who means a lot to me. Those guys both do. So, you know, I think that that's the thing about this this football team, and, you know, even going back, I mean, with Bill Walsh, you know, a lot of people, you know, don't remember that they were a top 5 unit defensively back then too. So, you know, all you got to do is look up, you know, in the Ring of Honor, there's been a bunch of defensive players here who are in the Hall of Fame who've played at a high level, and, you know, we've got a lot of high level guys on this team too, and that's why we gotta focus on our guys and, you know, being as good as we can be.
When Kyle has talked about bringing in an outside coach, maybe with some different philosophies and melding it in, he's gone back to the example of his dad, Mike, coming over in '92, and back then, I guess George Seifert challenged him to just sit down and study everything that the 49ers did. Did Kyle present a similar challenge to you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that was one of the things that, you know, you're excited about, is to join up with a new group of guys that you really respect, you know, offensively, defensively, and in the kicking game, you know, improve yourself, and then, you know, where it fits, you know, experiences that you've had in the past, things that make sense, then, you know, you can apply some things too. And, you know, Mike has been really good to me over the years. His, you know, Kyle's dad, you know, been a great resource for me, a guy that I have the utmost respect for, you know, a guy that, you know, I think is one of the top coaches to ever coach. You know, and I'm fortunate, you know, that he's, you know, reached out to me and been a resource for me. And now that I'm here, you know, that can take place even more. And so very grateful for that. And, you know, like you said, you're always trying to improve, you know, as a competitor, as a coach. And, you know, I think coming here allows us all to do that.
You've been coaching for almost 20 years now. It's a very fluid profession. So I'm wondering, do you set a 5-year goal for what you want to be doing in 5 years, and as being a head coach again in the immediate or in the long-term range, rather than obviously immediacy is?
Well, I think the longer you coach, you realize it's one day at a time, you know, and I think that's something that every competitor kind of knows, but the longer you do it, you know, the more you're focused on today. And so, you know, the longer I do it, the more that I'm just focused on being as good as I can be today for these guys. And, you know, if we pour into the players, good things will happen. And this is a really good group of coaches. Like I said, it's an outstanding organization. And I say that because I think they really care about, you know, this team. And then I think that the success, you know, has followed that. You know, you put quality people together who are connected, that are aligned, that care about the right things, and good things will happen.